Triple E EDC back again with another knife video. This is the Benchmade Oeser Tengu Flipper. However, this is not the custom version. This is the production version by Benchmade. Some of you may be familiar with Benchmade Oeser's work. He is a custom knife maker, very, very popular, and he does a lot of modern takes on traditional looking knives or turning traditional looks into modern knives. And you know, his customs go for a lot of money on the secondary market, and they're very, very sought after. He can't make these fast enough, which is why Benchmade is a good partner for him, because they will make production versions of his knives. So there are two versions of his knives, I think, that are coming out. This is the Tengu Flipper, and there's also a Tengu friction folder. I don't know if the friction folder also exists in a custom, but it's worth mentioning here that they are going to come out with that. That's sort of a multi-tool slash knife, and you know, just be aware that if you're looking at that one, it's like a 1-inch blade. It's very, very small. This is a not quite full size, probably a medium sized knife, but this is the Tengu Flipper. So let's go ahead and look at some size comparisons here. This is a relatively small knife, a fairly small knife by my standards anyway, because I like larger knives. This is the Benchmade. Benchmade. This is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. I bet all you Spyderco guys are turning over, turning your heads at that one. But this is the Spyderco Para 3, and you can see, so against both the Paramilitary 2 and the Para 3, that the Tengu Flipper is quite small. Let's go ahead and take a look at actual Benchmades. This is the Benchmade Griptilian and the Benchmade 940. And probably a good knife to put up against it is the Spyderco Akuchi as well, another thinner knife. Let's go ahead and take a look at probably the two best size comparisons. One of them being the Bugout, Benchmade Bugout. So you can see the Bugout is bigger in the blade and bigger in the handle, but not so much bigger in the handle, but definitely bigger in the blade. So the best size comparison is the Benchmade Proper. This is a very spot-on size comparison for the Tengu Flipper. So if you're familiar at all with the Proper and you like the Proper, you're probably going to like the Tengu Flipper as far as the size and everything like that. And also the fact that this is very similar. There's one key difference between these two, other than the fact that it's a flipper versus a slip joint, that I will cover later when we get to the bad. So let's talk about the good of this knife. So first of all, what's great about this knife is the fit and finish for the most part. There's one exception to that. I'll talk about that too. But the fit and finish on this is excellent. Everything, the scales to the liners to the backspacer, everything is fit together amazingly. The finish on this is really nice. There's a little bit of texturing on the G10, or a little bit of milling, very, very slight. It feels smooth, but then it provides just enough grip. And then you've got the really nice finishing on the backspacer here. Fit and finishing is very, very, very nice on this knife, except for one fitment piece, and that is the shield here. So the shield here, you can probably see, is sunken a little bit below the G10 on that scale. You can probably see the edges of the top of the shield specifically. And so it feels like there's a little depression there. It could be intentional that the shield sits a little lower than the scale. If it is intentional, I don't agree with that decision. If it's not intentional, then this is not the best quality controlled piece. So, but just to be aware that that is an issue. All right, another great thing about this knife is the blade. I think this is a really attractive blade. I love the aesthetics of this. It's a nice high saber grind, very small, sort of Japanese tanto style knife. Benchmade claims it's a Japanese tanto style. I can definitely see that, but it's not a true Japanese tanto. There's a little swedge at the top right here. That gives it some nice aesthetic that blends in very well with the fact that there's an extended bevel on the end there. As you can see, the bevel's longer here than it is underneath, and I think that also adds to the aesthetic. The overall aesthetic is beautiful. In addition to the blade being beautiful, the handle is beautiful as well. It is made up of G10, so you've got black G10 here with white, with a layer of white underneath it. Then you've got steel liners, black and white tuxedo back spacer, which is also G10, stacked up on top of each other. Then you've got another liner and another layer of white G10 and black G10. So overall, this is just beautiful. This tuxedo, it makes for a very, very nice gentleman's folder, and I really like that decision. There's also some good and bad here with the clip. Now, as you'll notice, there is no clip on the knife. The clip is this. This is the clip. It's a slip. We'll get to that slip later, but just wanted to mention there is no clip. Normally I would say that's a negative on a knife, but I actually, in a knife this size, I don't mind it. And it is quite nice not to have a hot spot where the clip normally would be. So definitely like that. And that's one of the things that I really love about the Proper when I use the Proper is the fact that there's no clip. It really kind of feels nice, and it's kind of freeing and liberating not to have to worry about a clip. So, that is the good there. Also, the blade steel is 20 CV, probably the best steel you can get on a knife, according to many people. I think I have one or two other steels that I like more, but 20 CV, M390, 204P, those are all basically the same chemical composition steel, and is well known to be the best available one on the market for balancing the non-corrosiveness, edge retention, and toughness all in the same knife. Usually you're giving up one or the other to compensate for the other two. This is a nice blend of all three. So this is a great choice for a gentleman's folder, 20 CV, and that definitely is what is a category that this falls into, and is a category that Benchmade is trying to have this fall into. This is also a knife that's on bearings from Benchmade, which you don't see too often. The action on this overall is very good. There is a detent at the back, which is a pretty strong detent. There's also a detent up here, which you need to get past right there. And once you get past it, this will smoothly fall shut. It is not fall shut. You must, sort of wiggle it to get it shut. This has been oiled with KPL, and you see the action is definitely not fall shut. It is very smooth though, despite the no fall shut, and you can see the centering on this is right dead on. If you look at the layers of G10, the point of this is right dead on, and there's very little space in between the scales and the knife, so it's extremely compact, which is also another nice feature of it. But because of that, I think that is what's adding a little bit, is it had to be sort of more tightly fit together, and so that's adding to the fact that it won't drop shut. Also, it's a lighter blade, and with a lighter blade, it's not going to drop shut as easily. So those are a couple things to think about there. But overall, those are the things that I really love about this knife. The knife does hold and handle a lot similarly as far as ergonomics goes to the Proper, with one exception, and I'm going to get into that now because I'm going to put the ergonomics actually on the neutral side. I'm not going to say they're bad, but I'm not going to say they're good either. And the main reason for that is, the Proper is probably the smallest knife I'll go and say that there's good ergonomics on it. You'll see the Proper is designed where you still have this point here and this point here, and my fingers are sort of caught in between. But for whatever reason, I don't mind it on the Proper. Just the way it's shaped fits really well into my hand. I have a large glove size hand, and it really fits a full 4-finger grip pretty well. Sorry, I knocked the camera a little bit. Also holds in this dimension very well because of the curvature in the back. So if you're doing any pairing with your knife, this is a good hold for the Proper. The same basic ergonomics exist in the Tengu. It still has that same sort of carry profile here, and it still has that same curvature in the back where you can hold it, to pairing, to peel an apple or something. And really the only main difference is going to be if you line the two knives up, you can see that little chunk sticking out on the end, that square sticking out on the end of the Tengu. Other than that, the ergonomics are fairly similar. The main thing that's the problem on the Tengu is the flipper tab. And so if the flipper tab wasn't there, this would be extremely comfortable, for just like a proper is. Because it's there, if you hold the knife here, I'm going to say the ergonomics are poor. Meaning if you hold the knife behind the flipper tab, which is how a lot of people are going to hold it, it doesn't feel comfortable in my hand. I mean, it's not the worst, but it's not comfortable. However, if I go back to where I normally hold the proper and sort of tuck that flipper tab into the crease of my finger, it becomes comfortable again, but I still have that, protrusion into my finger, or into the crease of my finger from the flipper tab, which means that this is not as comfortable as it could be. So one suggestion, which would be interesting, is a front flipper version of this knife. Would be great. I would like to see Benchmade. I know it's not really how Jared Oeser designed it, and that's not true to the custom, but if you turned this knife in particular into a front flipper, you would solve the problem with here. You wouldn't have to add a thumb stud to make it, to change the aesthetic. Overall, you could probably fit a small front flipper here where the bend is, and sort of, flip it back, or extend the knife up here and sort of flip it back this way. So just a thought on the design of the knife. I would like to see, sort of a different version of this that deletes the flipper tab here. I don't think a nail nick is going to be the solution, mainly because one of the big differences between the proper and the Tengu is going to be the fact that the Tengu has a lower profile due to the fact that the blade is recessed when closed into the knife, whereas the proper has it sticking out so that you can get the nail nick. Here, you're not going to have anything to grab onto. So also on the bad is moving on to the bad, I should say, is the billboarding. The Benchmade logo on this is too big on the front side, and this is just obscenely bad on the back side, the billboarding here. I understand Benchmade does their first productions. I understand they put their 20 CV and they got Jared Oeser's, maker's mark there, but there is no reason why Jared Oeser's maker's mark needs to say J. Oeser Knives in addition to the maker's mark. They could have taken off J. Oeser Knives, had the maker's mark next to the first production, and then put the 20, have the maker's mark next to the 20 CV, and then have the first production separately. Would have looked much better. And on this particular knife, it might have even been better if they hid the first production with some sort of serialized number on the spine, or some other solution, maybe inside the tab here. Would have been a great solution for them to do it. Also, the Detent's a little bit on the strong side. I've seen many people post online that the Detent is strong. I've seen a couple of people say they're selling it for that reason online. Now, I'm probably going to hold on to this. I'm not going to sell it, so a little spoiler for the conclusion here. But I will say that when I first got this, I developed Sabenza thumb on my pointer where I'm, flipping this thing. For a couple of reasons. The Detent is stiff, but really even more importantly than the Detent being stiff is that the flipper tab I think is pretty poorly designed. The flipper tab itself, as you can see, is rounded, so your finger wants to flip off, which means you have to put a bunch of pressure on it in order to actuate it. Push button flipping doesn't work. Push button doesn't work. You have to light switch it, okay? And so if you light switch it, you have to push down at the same time because you see the jimping on here is really, well, I should say there's no jimping on top. It's basically faux jimping, right? So the fact that it's rounded here and the fact that you have to push down in order to create grip on your finger and then pull it down past a strong detent, you will, if you like to flip your knives and play around with them, develop Sabenza thumb, or a bruised forefinger essentially in your pointer. And that's not a lot of fun. Now, I've flipped this open and closed and sort of pushed past this now the detent actually is dialed in much better. I also happened to loosen the pivot screw a little bit. It came a little bit tight. So after doing those two things, definitely seemed to improve the action. And now it fires out 100% reliably. every time that you do it, although because of the flipper tab design, you will slip off, as you just saw, every once in a while. So again, the flipper tab could be better for 2 reasons. 1, you slip off, and 2, if you don't want to slip off and you want to put the right amount of pressure on, combined with the detent, you're going to bruise your forefinger. So that's a couple of the bad things as well. Overall, though, I mean, I think that's pretty much it on my bad. I don't have much else bad to say about this. It is a very, very nice knife. Price on this runs, I think, about $187. I'll say it's definitely worth the $187. If I had another suggestion to make, I would have really preferred a version of this where there was black micarta, and perhaps they'll do that down the road. I don't know, but I didn't like G10 as a first option on this, and I guess I have to admit I'm sort of biased against G10 a little bit because I really enjoy carbon fiber, micarta, and titanium all way more than G10. Not necessarily in that order, but the fact that it's G10 on a gentleman's folder, it would have been really nice. I think they could have sold this probably another 20 or 30 bucks markup, put carbon fiber on it, maybe even 50 bucks markup, put carbon fiber on it, or at least come out with a carbon fiber option, and they would have probably had the same reception they've had to it so far, other than the fact that it'd be a little bit nicer. So just a couple thoughts for Benchmade. I'd prefer a micarta version, but I know probably more people would like to see carbon fiber than micarta, but I like my micarta proper. Overall, though, this is a knife I'd recommend. I definitely recommend it if you are in the market for a knife this big. Be aware when... Oh, I'm sorry. I did forget one very important thing that I must mention here. On the bad. On the bad is the slip. So the slip itself, I don't think is full grain leather. I could be wrong about that. Full grain leather is like this. A pop-off leather case. This is a pop-off leather pocket armor. So this is full grain leather. This is really, really nice leather, and full grain is the best type of leather you can get. This feels much softer right out of the box than because this is sort of a harder leather right out of the box, same leather as my background here, but this leather was very soft, but it's a little thinner, so it feels like it could be a little bit cheaper, and so I don't think it's full grain leather. Again, I could be wrong about that. But that's really not my problem. This slip actually works really well for this knife. It fits it in really well for this knife. Holds it in, feels kind of nice in your hand. Don't have a lot of problems to say with, to complain about with this. What I do have to complain about is this. I mean, the stitching on this, the stitching job on this is absolutely horrendous. I'm concerned that it'll come apart. It's double stitched over, triple stitch, quadruple stitch, whatever this is. The stitching is awful. And if you can see, you can even see probably, there are portions of the stitching that are sort of still sticking up that weren't cut off in the factory. And it's just a bad job, I think, from the factory. It does have the Benchmade logo and proudly made in the USA. Come on, Americans, let's step up. This is also so pop-off leather. Again, has this nice, this nice full grain leather. If you don't like Benchmade's leather, this does work very well for it. It comes in a variety of colors. The pop-off leather pocket armor. It also comes with you can get an attachable attachment to put an EDC pen in here, like a Fisher Space pen. So if you want that type of setup, you can go on Pop-Off Leather's website, or there's a couple other places that do those as well, and you definitely can get that option. But I just want to show you this stitching compared to some other things. So you see the stitching here. See, this is beautifully done. Every single stitch, beautifully done. It's rounded here in order to stop the stitching and reinforce the sides. This is beautiful stitching. This is not, okay? Some other stitching you can look at. This is from my Zulu. This is the JE made Zulu, so that's the slip that came with the slip joint. And I got this second hand, so I don't know that this slip is actually, standard on it, but the leather feels pretty nice here. This has never been used. And you can see, again, the stitching on this. Now this is hand stitching with tiger thread. So this is like elite stitching. This is sort of standard production stitching. See if I can focus in on that. Production thread, but much better stitching job. Much better stitching. See if we can get this to focus. There we go. Look at that stitching. Probably not coming out perfect, you know, all around. Much nicer stitching job. This is from CRK. This is the one that comes standard with a lot of CRKs. Again, no doubled over, crazy looking stitching. Then you can see more stitching here on, this is a Phobos Tier 1 Mini, on the sheath. Again, this is tiger thread, I think, but you can see the attention to detail. So, Benchmade, you got to step up your sheath game, for real. Or leather slip, I should say. But overall, would I recommend this for the $187 or so you're going to spend on it? Yeah, I would recommend it. I also want to thank Zach from Zach Stuff. Zach got me a good deal on this and sent this my way. I really appreciate him getting it for me. He got it for me at a time when it wasn't really available. It's more widely available now, but when it first came out, it wasn't as available. So definitely a huge thank you to Zach Stuff. If you're not subscribed to his channel, go subscribe to Zach Stuff's channel. Zach is a really, really generous and positive guy. He does a lot of giveaways on his channel. He does a lot of live chats. If you like live chats, definitely go check out his channel. He's got a bigger channel than me, but his is great. So if you're not already subscribed, you should be. That's pretty much my rant on this. Definitely am a fan of this knife. Some areas for improvement overall. So I will say this is a recommend, but with a couple of reservations. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I really appreciate you. If you're not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get all the notifications. Also have a giveaway running right now if you're watching this at or about the time the videos release, so make sure you go check that out as well. Thanks.